Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Plugged In from YAA Electric. My name is Justin Fisher, and today I'm joined again by Mario from the YAA community. How are you doing today, Mario?
Hey Justin, good morning. Doing very well. Thank you. Thank you.
Awesome. Well,
Thank you.
today's headline topic is we're going to be chatting with Mario about the best and worst electric vehicle deals right now, whether you're looking to buy, lease, or you're just testing the waters. We'll be talking about what deals are out there, if there are any, and what inventory looks like. This is a big thing that we're going to hit on today because use data to your advantage when you're shopping for an EV in today's crazy market. Mario is going to share with us which EVs have the most and least inventory and how that can be leveraged to find you a better deal. We'll also dive in a little bit to YAA car dealer reviews and see what kinds of electric vehicle reviews and deals people have been able to find that they've shared with us over at joinyaa.com. So, Mario, I will pull that up later in the show, see what we can find. So, good morning, everyone in the chat on YouTube. We've got Dwayne, John, Igor, Julius. Good morning, everyone. So, feel free to drop us your EV questions in the chat. And if you're listening to us on the podcast, welcome. Thank you for being here. And please do email me at justin@joinyaa.com. I'd love to know what topics are interesting you right now, and we'll cover it on a future show. Before we get too much further, I want to say that at 7 p.m. Eastern today, so 7 p.m. Friday night today, we're going to be talking to a Tesla supercharger technician live on the show at 7 p.m. here at YAA Electric. That's going to be interesting. I'll be talking to Tyler, who's the regional supercharger technician, about the network's growth, what might happen if they open it up to other EVs. Does Tesla have an advantage in rural America? Because he's the supercharger technician in a very rural region. It's going to be super interesting. So be there at 7 p.m. All right, Mario, we'll kick things off by talking a bit about EV inventory. Now, you've shared some fascinating numbers with me. Could you just kind of characterize with us what data you collected and why you decided that this was the best data to collect in 2022 when looking at where the deals lie with EVs?
Yeah. We usually, I'm usually at the community, dealing with deals that people actually have, in real life, and we see this disconnect sometimes between, the data that you see sometimes on Car Gurus and those listings, and what's actually available, right, on the dealers, or how available, is it, how easy is it to order a vehicle. So what I did is I went directly through the each manufacturer's API to pull their data. And since I cannot do it nationally, it's really difficult. I did find a service that's available online that you can pull at least regionally, right? So what I did is I gathered a sample, based in Southern California, which is where I'm located, and I can validate the information. And I pulled, how many by model, how many units are being allocated, right, to this market. And California, as you know, it's like the test bed for EVs, right? And um, so we're going to see, this is the best case scenario. Most OEMs assign the highest number of allocations to this area, just because the absorption rate is so high, because the conditions are optimal. And we can get an idea of, like, who's, like, those allocations, like who has the biggest volume right now in Southern California, and probably translate the same way to other regions in a smaller footprint, probably, right? But it'll be interesting just to go through the main models. Not, I didn't, go into Lucid or Rivian or those exotic vehicles, but mostly, your bread and butter, your Mach-E's and your Bolts and your ID.4s and Ionics, etc. Right?
Yeah. And with Lucid and Rivian and Tesla, you're going to most likely end up on a wait list if you're going for any of these vehicles. Not to mention that that's the same is true for many of the legacy automakers. But we know that the Tesla Model Y, um, you're going to be waiting between 6 and 9 months for delivery of a Tesla Model Y, unless you add every option possible, including $12,000 full self driving. Then you can jump ahead in line. But I think that this is great the way you've collected this data. And after we go over these numbers, we'll also talk about what the situation is in detail with Tesla, because 3 out of 4 EV buyers are still opting for a Tesla branded EV. We'll talk about how things might change here in the future, better or worse. And Mario, let's dive in. So, if you want to go ahead and tell us which EVs have had the most production as of the most recent quarter, and how that might affect your ability to find one on the dealer lot.
Yeah, well, we don't, obviously some units are just going to be, ordered. They have to be either reserved, dealer allocation, or you do a factory order directly. It's going to be really, really tough to find, a lot, in a lot available units just for delivery. But for example, like I was kind of surprised. I normally don't hear a lot of Mach-E in the community. Very rarely, some people, they drop in and say, "Hey, I have this vehicle," and for example, when they use the Ford options balloon financing, that's how I kind of saw the Mach-E, right? But they're the highest right now, the highest allocations that I'm seeing from all the EV vehicles right now. Now, most of them are pre-sold, but it's really high. In a 500-mile sample from LA, we're talking about like 250 units being right now today. Actually, I just refreshed it this morning, and it changed. 252 units are either in transit or being actually physically on the lot, ready for delivery, or they're going to be delivered to their those pre-orders. And that's interesting. And in the case of the Mach-E, the order banks open in August, and it has always been like a pretty good deal. Back in March, before that the order banks closed, I remember, with the incentives were pretty good, and it's easy to order do a factory order with Ford under MSRP, but you just have to wait. And I saw a lot of those deals go through, just before midnight on the last day when the ordering was going to be closed, and they just filled in really quickly. And hopefully, I think that by August, when it opens, it's going to be a really good opportunity for those that want to lock in a nice priced, I think a really nice performing unit at a reasonable, offer compared to the alternatives, just getting another one, on the lot for, like you said, 10,000 or 15,000 over. So that's the first one that I'm seeing here in California with 252. The next one is one that I think has a lot of potential to be the best purchase low cost EV right now. Is the Bolt, the EV and the EUV. That's just a little below the Mach-E. We're seeing 205 units active, in Southern California. And I think, right now it's really tough to get one. It's super impossible. But I think that, the production that they're handling, which it kind of ramped up, I think they're going to be competing pretty well. They know that they know that they can produce those units, and they can. I'm seeing a lot of interest from people. When can I get my $26,000 Bolt? And it's just a matter of the market not place such a heavy add-ons or servicing or require financing, because we're seeing that with Chevy dealers really common.
Now, what's your opinion of the way that General Motors is offering to retroactively give that discount for the Chevy Bolt? Do you think this is something that maybe they're stepping a little bit out of the bounds as far as what we're normally seeing from automakers, or do you think this is a trend that could continue? Is it simply because of the fire recall that remember the Bolts have received brand new battery packs, so you could make the argument that they're better shape than they were before the whole recall mess. But do you think this is a trend that will continue, or is the Bolt just kind of an exception because of its storied history?
Well, what I'm seeing when people discussing the Bolt, it's just that I think not having the EV credit definitely hurts. I think that they recognize that that 7,500 that competitors have, for example, like the Mach-E, like YouTube can claim, right? It does impact the possibility of getting market share. So I think they recognize that that's a big issue also. In addition what you mentioned. So I think the market's going to balance out. I'm really concerned about dealers recognizing that there's $6,000 and then adding 3,000 in stuff on top of it just to recoup a little bit of that money. So we're gonna see. We still haven't seen flexibility in the market regarding pricing on both units. That's pretty definitive right now.
Now, over here on YAA Car Search, where you can find both new and used vehicles, I am seeing some Bolts marked up in a way that would probably take away quite a bit of the interest from that specific model because its appeal is affordability. The Bolt has up to 55 kilowatt charging speed, so it's not fast at charging. You're probably going to be sitting there for an hour. It does have solid range, especially for a quite outdated powertrain where it can get about 240, 250 miles on a charge in real world driving. That's pretty impressive. But it's really the affordability that is the selling point for the Bolt. Now, you've got the West Coast covered, Mario. You just shared with us that within a 500-mile radius of LA, there's 205 Bolts, correct?
Right now on the floor, right, with window stickers available to look like it's not something that's gonna arrive in 2 months or something.
Yeah.
Those issues. So yeah, and that's my pick for the most potential affordable EV, in the upcoming months, because it's such a big difference, from the other options. That's the one when people ask, what's the best deal right now? Just wait a little bit more until the market's more saturated, and we can get those deals, from the big Chevy dealers that might sell one for 800 over, which is becoming the new norm, right? So MSRP, with $800 and tint or whatever, right? That might be like the sweet spot. The other one, I'm just gonna go through the big ones.
Yes,
Justin.
please do.
ID4. I know that you were a fan of the ID4. I've been starting to see reasonable deals in California with the ID4. I think that they were stopped producing. Remember when they pulled the orders a couple of months ago, and now I'm seeing, even I saw a couple under MSRP. So it was kind of interesting. It doesn't lease super well, but they do have an advantage that the $7,500 EV credit does apply on a lease. And it might be okay for some people to lease it. It might be. It's not super deal, but it's nice for the benefit, of not having to keep a vehicle that's technology based and they want to resell it. They don't have to buy it and deal with the depreciation or whatever. But it's a lukewarm lease deal, and it's interesting. I have here 83 right now as of last night in Southern California, and I think it's going to start ramping up, hopefully, because it's a nice vehicle. I really like it. I test drove it. It's really nice.
So you've got 83 ID4s within 500 miles of Southern California, and I'm over here on the East Coast, so I've got YAA Car Search pulled up, and let's see just how many ID4s that I can find within this region. I know it has been very slim pickings around here.
Yeah.
So within 500 miles of DC, we've got 499 listings, but several of them say in transit. So I mean, whenever I was shopping for my Ioniq 5 back in April, I found that a lot of dealers were listing vehicles, specific VIN numbers that may have already been sold, just the other day, as they say, just yesterday was sold. I don't know if that was true, or that there were an allocation that was expected but may already be reserved. So we have to take the numbers that I'm sharing with everyone with a grain of salt. But Mario, you've got some more solid numbers with actual on the lot numbers. Is that what you're sharing with us?
Yes, they have to be on the dealer ready for delivery or be in transit, like that short period between, it's not an allocation that's coming in 2 months, and it's not also a vehicle that's been sold and it hasn't been delisted, which that happens every time that I deal with people. Like I found one on your listings and I call and it's sold. Like, yeah, it's sold because, probably haven't, like 2 weeks ago, or a week ago, and they still haven't, brought down the listing. So it duplicates or more the listings. That's why I can't go by CarGurus or other listing services, because it depends on what the dealer publishes.
Yes.
Right, the dealer it's the one that manages that inventory. But if you go through their API, directly to Hyundai, you go and search and query, their inventory, you'll get a different number, and it's what's going to be available right now.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to next talking about Hyundai and Kia, because I have an Ioniq 5 and I've been seeing more and more Kia EV6s on the road. I was more of a fan of the Ioniq 5 styling, but the EV6 from Kia, it has about 10 more miles of EPA rated range because it is more aerodynamic. and that alone is a good selling point. But Kia and Hyundai, they've been able to sell every car that they can produce. And I'm pulling up right now the electric vehicle market share numbers that I've been updating every day as the latest second quarter numbers are released. And we're seeing some pretty impressive numbers from Hyundai and Kia. So in the second quarter of 2022, they've sold about 14,000 combined, Hyundai and Kia, under the umbrella of Hyundai Motor Group. So that's quite a few. I mean, they're not at Tesla numbers, over 100,000 EVs sold in that quarter, but still, Hyundai, Kia, and Ford seem to be the second and third position behind Tesla. Can you share with us the EV6 and Ioniq 5 inventory numbers that you've seen on the West Coast?
And I know this one's pretty well because I was in the market back in January for an Ioniq 5. So I was in several wait lists actually.
Oh,
And they've been, even though, it's been almost 6 months, they start calling you suddenly, right?
yes.
And now I don't know if you experienced that, but then they start calling you and say, hey, are you still in the market? And we have X units available, right? And in the case of the EV6, it's really, really, really difficult. I haven't been able to see much movement. Like every unit that arrives is pre-sold, and if someone cancels and there's a unit available or financing fell through, those units they want $6,000 over. That's a deal, right? If you want to take it. But right now here in Southern California, I'm seeing a lot of 70 EV6 that are already on the lot and they're either in transit. I'm seeing Ioniq 5 also similarly around 30. That switches day by day. Sometimes I'm seeing during the week I saw 40, I saw 50, now I'm seeing 28. It could be just a fluctuation, but it did drop. I mean, definitely. It back in February and March, I remember they got allocations, 35 units, being allocated, one weekend, and they started calling everyone, and also, that was absorbed really quickly. And then when the fuel prices spiked here in California, then when it became impossible to get an Ioniq 5 and an EV6, everything has to be pre-ordered, reserved. We just had like a member in the community that we recommended him to go through Palm Springs, Hyundai. He just got his Ioniq 5 limited, exactly like yours. It's the cement white or whatever color it is, for MSRP without any add-ons. So there is still a possibility, because they do produce a lot of units, but they just either they come in and they don't have anything on the lot or anything available for walk-ins. It's 100% has to be reserved, and that's what I'm seeing with the EV6 and Ioniq, that their inventory available, it's really low compared to the other OEMs.
Now, we have quite a few viewers and listeners who are interested in the Ioniq 5, just because I talk about mine so much. I guess we're starting to gather that following. However, I wanted to point out a very interesting resource that anyone interested in the Ioniq 5 or Kia EV6 can use to find dealer allocations near them. It's theevfinder.com. Mario, are you familiar with theevfinder.com?
Yeah, it works pretty well for Kia and Hyundai.
Very limited, yes.
Yeah, there's others available. Yeah, there's another one available. I'll send you the link for GM, VW, and Nissan, and the other.
That would be great. Ones. So within 500 miles of DC in the Bethesda, Maryland area, we're seeing 178 Ioniq 5 allocations. Now, this is at theevfinder.com. And out of those 178 allocations in this region, only 11 are the limited all-wheel drive trim. So it's just that's a lot less, a lot fewer vehicles than whenever I was looking back in April. It's just been amazing to see how Hyundai has been directly impacted by the chip shortage. If you're looking for an Ioniq 5 anywhere within the United States right now, and probably up in Canada too, your best bet is going to be with the SE or SEL trims. I even had a few dealers offering the base trim Ioniq 5, the SE, at like $1,000 under MSRP. But this was back in April. I'm not sure if they'd still be doing that anymore with even more restricted inventory. I met someone who purchased an ID4 rear-wheel drive last year for $2,000 under MSRP. So gone are those days.
Yeah, and the ones that I'm seeing in California has been 4% under MSRP. So I was really impressed. It's just that the lease program is so bad that they kind of need to offset, so it makes sense. So that's where I'm kind of looking into the ID4 as a major opportunity, if dealers are being flexible right now. And with the Ioniq and the Hyundais, I do know that the East Coast has way better. I think because it doesn't have as much demand, I don't know, but it has way better pricing than us in the West Coast. You're kind of stuck
Yeah.
here. Yeah.
Well, in the West Coast, most of the states in the West Coast and several in the East Coast too have significant state level incentives for EV purchases.
Hmm.
So that also adds a dynamic that I wasn't even able to consider where I live. I don't have any state incentives. So um, something to consider if you're comparing prices, markups, and whatnot is how would you still be able to take advantage of the incentives in your pocketbook, or would the dealer markups that you might be seeing for any electric vehicle cancel
Hmm.
out the incentives, which is just
Yeah.
sad when that happens. I've seen
Yeah.
plenty of EV buyers, including Ionic 5 buyers, justify paying $6,000 over MSRP because they say, well, at least I get the federal incentive. So um, just makes up for that. But that's just something to keep in mind.
Right.
Um, I've seen that the Ionic 5 that I purchased for 56,000 has been listed online for about 70,000 for quite some time used. And now I've been thinking, should I just sell it and make this an investment? But I like my car too much, so I'm
No.
pretty sure I'm just going to keep it.
Uh,
Now,
then,
one more vehicle that you have pretty high on the list for solid inventory in the West Coast is the Audi e-tron family. Do we know if these numbers include the Q4 e-tron or just the large e-tron? What about the
no,
Sportback?
it's just the Sportback, the GT, and the normal e-tron. And
Okay.
I put it, yeah, the Q. I think production has been really low. I
Yes,
mean, it's
they've had a
almost,
hard time bringing any
yeah,
Q4 e-trons to North America.
yeah. So, but the e-tron, I mean, that's top level because they're so expensive. But in California, you do see a lot of e-trons, on the road, and it's similar to what the EV6 is. It's right now on the lot with 67 units right now, but it's very rare. Those vehicles, either when you see them a lot in the road, but they're not easy to find. To get an allocation. So I think these are either returning e-tron lessees or people. Yeah, I do see a lot. People who lease their e-tron in 2018, 2019. They have a lot of equity and they get into another e-tron, and that's how I think that they're also positioning these 90,000 or sometimes $120,000 EVs. They're really expensive, to make sense, because the only way to make sense is if you take that equity or 10,000. I've seen $16,000 in equity, and apply it, to a new lease. So it makes sense, having that $1,400 payment. So I think that's how they move those, because they're really expensive. They're really nice though. They're really nice.
Yeah, I like them a lot. I wish they charged a little bit faster. I believe they're capped at
Yeah.
about 130 or maybe 150 kilowatt speeds for
Mhm.
the e-tron. The Volkswagen ID4 is capped at about 135. But other than that, I think it's a great EV with solid range. The range ratings have been proven to be quite true in real world driving, which we know that even for Tesla, that's not always the case. If it's rated for
Yes.
330 miles
Mhm.
of range, you might only get 270, 280 in the real world. But
Mhm.
Volkswagen's new electric platform has been having pretty accurate EPA range ratings, and that's a
Mhm.
good sign if you're looking into those EVs. Now,
Yeah.
Mario, before we talk about leasing, because I do want to touch on leasing before we wrap up the show,
Mhm.
which EVs have the least inventory in your region, which is the West Coast, based on the numbers that you've been looking at?
It's really easy. The Leaf,
That's
the Leaf.
surprising to me. That's
Yeah,
surprising.
it's super tough to get a leaf. A Leaf.
Any idea
They
why?
they had like a great lease program back in March, like an 18-month lease that it really was incredible. It had like a residuals in the 92%, and they just sold super quick. They also have like a lot of incentives. There was a Uber, for Uber drivers. They had like 3,000, I think, in addition. So those who knew what to do and knew about these programs, they took advantage of it, and they kind of they the inventory was completely gone, and also production hasn't been great. As you know, I think they only produced like 7,600 leaves during the year, during 2022. which is, it's very low volume for a very well-known unit, right? And
Yeah.
also, I'm sorry. Also, the other ones that are really tough here is the Kona and the Nero EV. They're so popular. Have always been really popular, and they're relatively good lease deals. Like, for example, like the Nero, has $9,300 in lease cash, and that
Wow.
completely, for those who know how to structure a lease deal correctly,
Mhm.
that could make a good deal. On a vehicle that could be 44,000 or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So, but the problem is that since it has really good incentives, 9,300 is not common. Um, then you see everyone wants one and it disappears, right? So we have the lowest inventory of those here in Southern California, and probably everywhere. For the Kona, the Nero, and the Leaf.
Yeah, the Kona EV, the Leaf, the e-Niro, and the Chevy Bolt, those 4 are really the only truly affordable electric vehicle
Mhm.
options in the market right now. One interesting trend that I've seen is that during these times of very restricted inventory, I have not seen many base trim Konas, Neros, Leafs, and Bolts on the market, specifically when it comes to the Kona and Nero in my region. I have not seen many affordable $36,000 base trims. I've seen the higher trims on the
Yeah.
lot for like
Mhm.
$44,000.
Yeah.
So that's
Mhm.
definitely something to consider. Um, does all of this
Yeah.
just make the case for more people going to direct to consumer, like Tesla, Polestar, Fisker coming up next year? Does this make the case for that? Are they being
Uh,
impacted just as much with the restricted inventory?
I don't know about that area. What I do think is that we need more affordable EVs in the
Yeah.
market. The Leaf, from the beginning, with those killer lease deals, there were the big engines for adoption of EVs, right? Even with the
Mhm.
Bulb, I remember those lease deals like for $199 here in Southern California. You could get like a nice Bulb for 36 months. And those ones really pushed, the adoption. Now it's because of the shortage; they don't have to do that, but I think that there's a market, for a nice Nero EV, like the EX. It's a pretty nice vehicle. I test driven it. It's really for the money. I think it's a really good alternative to the other options, but there's no supply. That's a
Yeah.
problem. And the
No.
Leaf, is a good example. Also, I mean, I'm not a fan of the Leaf, but for people who are really budget conscious, it makes complete sense. When you have a $299 payment a month.
Yeah,
But
one thing I wanted to bring up is, like, what are you sacrificing by going for one of these 4 most affordable EVs? Really, what you're
Mhm,
sacrificing is charging speed,
mhm,
range to an extent, but mostly charging speed, because these 4 EVs are gonna cap out around 55 kilowatt charging
yeah.
speeds. I know I believe one of the Leaf trims is able to charge quicker, closer to 100 kilowatts. I could be wrong on that. I could be making that up. But, yeah, you're really sacrificing charging speed, so rather than spending 30 minutes at a charger when
Mhm,
traveling, you're gonna be spending more like an hour at a charger when traveling, but the Leaf, the Nero, the Kona, the Bolt, they do cost like half as much as most other options on the market. So, it's like 25, $30,000 less than the faster charging EVs. So that's just a comparison consideration that buyers will have to make. We have a great question here in the chat, and I want to talk about this one because I think you'll be able to help me out, Mario. It's
yeah.
about Polestar. Do Volvo dealerships service Polestar vehicles? This listener is 300 miles from a Polestar dealership and 8 miles from Volvo. So, what is your insight here?
My experiences, not officially, but they do use the same installations. You'll contact Polestar, and it'll be a Polestar service writer. They'll take the unit and everything. But I do know that they use the actual installations for Volvo to, apply the updates or the fixes to the vehicles. Yes, it's a really big concern. My experience hasn't been great. It's difficult to understand, where should you go, and do they know about what Polestar is? Some guys don't. When you call them directly, it's kind of difficult to find people. I think it's one of the big learning curves that Polestar has to cover. That I know that Tesla has, 100%. They make you they go 150 miles over to give you a unit, and they take the other unit, your unit, to the service center. It just doesn't make much sense. instead of just fixing it on the spot, you know. So I think, yeah, it's a good question to ask the Polestar rep. What process do they have for that specific dealership? Because as you know, they have these I don't know what they're called, the like these small service like dealer. It's not a dealer, but it's like I
Like
don't
a
know what they call it.
contractor?
Yeah, it's like this. There's a bubble dealer, and then like next door to the bubble dealer, this small office, and then they have the Polestar cars and the salesman and stuff, right?
Oh,
So
okay.
it's not like a space. Oh, that's why they call it a space, like a Polestar space. So
Yes,
it's not like a full dealer, you know, like a store. It's kind of just like something temporary. So yeah, it's a big concern. I would definitely ask, you know, what the process do they have, and get, you know, guarantee that they will service your area with a loaner when they take your vehicle to service. Because I
and
had that conversation with them a couple of times.
yeah, so Mario drives a Polestar 2. Now,
Yeah.
something I want to bring up for our listener who had that question is, consider this. With my own Ionic 5 purchasing process, and I know the same is true for most legacy automakers, the Hyundai dealer in my region, just 10 miles away, similar to your situation, is still not certified or able to sell the Ionic 5 or any electric vehicle at their Hyundai location. They don't have any chargers. They told me this themselves. They don't have any chargers. They
Hmm.
said they've got to spend about $150,000
Yeah.
before they can start selling any EVs at their dealership. So you need to consider that the Volvo dealership near you, they may not be allowed to sell any of these models yet. Not to mention, so the C40, XC40 Recharge, great EVs from Volvo, but not to mention the Polestar, which is going to be most likely restricted to these Polestar spaces. Which
Yeah.
I know how you feel, because I'm a huge fan of the Fisker Ocean, up to 350 miles of range,
Hmm.
fast charging. I think it looks cool, got
Hmm.
solid ground clearance, and I need that in my neck of the woods. But there's not going to be any Fisker service centers or, you know, spaces, dealerships, places to buy and service a
Hmm.
Fisker. They're not going to be anywhere near where I live, so I've given up on that particular EV.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
But
Now,
my experience with, oh, just to close this, some services, they do redirect you to the Volvo dealer in your neighborhood. Like I had like a alignment to be done, and they send me to the Volvo dealer. But beyond that, you have to go to all the way. You know, I'm 100 miles away from the space, and they have to go back to the original dealer. So yeah, on the P2, that's a major issue that you need to clear up before you make the decision of pulling the trigger. But I haven't had any troubles. You know, let me say that I haven't. Over the air updates, everything's fine. It's just you're gonna encounter some kind of weird noise that you want to be, you know, taken care of.
yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
Justice in the chat, another one of our YAA auto experts, says it's not only about affordability, they need to make the type of vehicle that people are buying. A recent survey came out that showed a big
Yeah.
reason why Americans, at least, are not buying EVs in droves is, well, not just the prices and the lack of inventory, but it's also the fact that many families want a full sized SUV that's electric, not just a crossover. Now, we know that Kia is working on this with, I believe, is it the EV7 or EV9? It's the EV9, right? Pretty sure.
Mhm.
And then we've got the Hyundai Ioniq 7, which is also in the works. The Rivian R1S, which is, oh, I don't know, $100,000 plus. So these are not affordable options. We're going to need affordable, full sized SUV electric options to hit the market at some point for a whole nother segment of car buyers to decide to go electric. Um, why hasn't that happened yet? It's pretty obvious. It's physics. Full-sized SUVs are not aerodynamic at all, and that's going to mean you need more battery power, more battery capacity to go the same number of miles. Batteries are expensive. Raw material prices have doubled in the past year. Literally, every EV on the market contains an average of $8,000 in raw materials today. That's more than double what it was last year. These types of things, these types of dynamics that are constantly in flux are why we still don't see any affordable full-sized electric SUVs. Just wanted to bring that up. I think that's a very good point to talk about.
Mhm.
Can we wrap this up by talking about leases? Any good or horrible lease deals? I know we've talked about why it's not a good idea to lease from certain electric automakers because they don't pass on the incentives. Can you just give us a summary of what you've seen, what's on your mind?
There's nothing out there that leases like we're used to. Like absolutely, it's a really bad time. Interest rates are so high that if you can get like financing through your credit unit, 9.9 times out of 10, it's going to be a better deal to buy the vehicle. You can even stretch, the loan for 72 months and you'll still probably have a better interest rate and a lower monthly. So it just doesn't make much sense unless it's those specific cases that do apply the credit, like the ID4 or the Niro or the Kona. In other cases, it's something we might need to discuss into the future, Justin. Balloon financing is really interesting. I mean, it's really risky if it's not done correctly. But for example, a Mach-E had like a really, really, really great balloon option finance. So you can keep your payments low and you'll still claim the credit. And that's kind of the formula for leasing, right? You want to have a low payment, you want to also claim the credit. So right now, nothing is leasing well, in general, except those 3 vehicles that are really tough to find. The Leaf, if you get the 18-month program, it's going to be really impossible. Or get the Niro, the Kona, or the ID4, which is a lackluster lease deal. But it's okay if you want to lease and you want a nice car. That's
Yeah,
it.
and something to mention is that Ford recently jumped on the Tesla bandwagon where they are now not allowing lease buybacks for their
Yeah.
electric vehicles. So the Ford Mustang Mach-E, F-150 Lightning, if you lease, you cannot purchase that vehicle at the end of the lease. That's not even like considered a lease anymore, really, if you follow the definition. I mean, what are your thoughts on this? Which, by the way, Tesla made this decision about, I don't know, 6 months ago, where you can no longer buy out a Tesla lease either. Like,
Yeah.
what's the reasoning for doing this?
I think it's 2. One is they obviously have seen the equity that vehicles have, and they want to keep that equity for themselves. I think that's pretty obvious. Everyone's been doing it, all the OEMs. But the other one's more real. I think that they're afraid of the residual values going down really bad, and they want to control the lease returns and the really nice lease returns. So because there so many vehicles are coming into the market in the next 18 months, EV vehicles. It could be a recipe for more competition and also greater depreciation, because you'll have other options, like where you're gonna this Mach-E from 2021 compared to this BYD, that just have its value, half the cost. Is gonna impact residual values, definitely. So I think that other OEMs could get into it if they want to control these lease returns, so they don't flood the market and reduce the residual value. So it's kind of, I think that there's some smart thinking behind them of what's coming when this wave of little lower priced when more selection EVs come into the market, what's gonna impact the residuals, and they want to control the inventory of those vehicles for themselves and control the price, keep the residual higher.
Okay, and before we go, thank you so much for that, Mario. Before we
Mhm.
go, I want to address a few listener questions because we've got some really good
Yeah.
ones in the chat today. From Educational Technology in the YouTube chat, any thoughts on the Chevy Bolt EUV with no tax credit or the 2023 Niro EV with the tax credit? I'm going to give my 2 cents, and then Mario, if you want to chime in, that would
Mhm.
be awesome.
Go ahead.
So, the
Go ahead.
Chevy Bolt EUV, it's going to be starting around $30,000. It's a few thousand more than the Bolt EV, the smaller, normal sized version. No tax credit, but here's why I would be more of a fan of the Bolt EUV over the Niro EV. It is a lower price because the Niro EV is going to be starting closer to $40,000. I mean, it's basically $10,000 more than the Bolt EV. And here's something that many may not have thought of. The Bolt has just come out of very intensive engineering inspection, right? Because of the Bolt fire recall, where they received a brand new battery pack from LG Chem. They double, triple, quadruple checked everything on the engineering side of the Bolt to make sure that the kinds of mistakes that caused the huge Bolt recall don't happen again. So I feel that I would feel pretty comfortable driving the Chevy Bolt around, not worrying about battery combustibility and things like that, because it's been so extensively checked and double checked before the stop sale was ended, and it is now making its way back to dealerships. But once again, the Chevy Bolt EUV is about $10,000 less than the Niro EV. When you factor in the tax credit, that difference comes down to about $3,000, depending on your tax situation. However, there's also the mileage difference. The Chevy Bolt EUV gets about 250 miles on a charge. The Niro EV gets about 238. So
Mhm.
that might matter if you travel a lot. Charging speeds are about the same. You're going to be looking at about 55 kilowatt charging speeds. It's going to take about an hour to charge from 10% to 90% if you're traveling. But keep in mind that 90% of EV owners charge at home overnight, where you just plug it in and forget about it.
Yeah.
Mario, what's your take?
Easy. Buy the Bolt, lease the Nero. It's worth the
Okay,
premium. That's it. Yeah. It's worth the premium for
nice.
the Nero leasing. Yeah.
Very, very interesting. One more question. So I appreciate this one. Why isn't the ID4 on my affordable list? So I've mentioned the Nissan Leaf, the Kia e-Niro, Hyundai Kona EV, and the Chevy Bolt as being the four most affordable EVs. The only reason that I left the Volkswagen ID4 off of this list is my own experiences trying to find one at a solid price. Inventory is just so slim that the few ID4s that I could find within 500 miles of where I live were marked up to roughly $50,000 regardless of trim. I mean, I was finding base trim rear wheel drive Volkswagen ID4s for about $50,000 at dealerships. To me, that was just outside of the bounds of what is considered affordability in 2022. But you're right, the ID4 can be a solid deal, especially if you can find one in the low to mid 40s before the tax credit is applied. But if
I think
Volkswagen
44 is the right number. Yeah. For
we
the
got to keep in
84.
mind that just in a few months, Volkswagen is going to start producing the ID4 in Chattanooga, Tennessee. That's going to benefit all North American ID4 customers from the US up to Canada. We should see way more inventory coming up as long as they can procure enough chips, because EVs do require more semiconductors than non EV models. But that should help to drive prices back down. Maybe, who knows, we'll see a good deal on an ID4 pretty soon.
Mhm. Yeah. And I'm bullish on the ID4. Just they did so well last year. I don't even remember everyone wanted like an ID4.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Learning fast in the chat. The
Yes.
Nero EV is super efficient, right? Yes. The
Correct.
Nero EV and Kona EVs, the Hyundai Kia Duo, they are way more efficient than my Ioniq 5. So
Mhm.
I've got 800-volt charging, which means I can charge really fast, like 20, 30 minutes from empty to full. But the Nero and Kona, they have a significant advantage, especially if you're into EVs for environmental reasons. They are way more efficient, which means you're going to go more miles with a smaller battery. If only they charged faster, though. That's my main complaint, as we travel a lot. Well, Mario, I want to
Yeah.
remind everyone that today at 7 p.m., I will be joined by Tyler, who is a regional Tesla supercharger technician here in southern West Virginia. So, what many would consider flyover country or the middle of nowhere. It's where I live. Uh, this awesome guy, Tyler, he is responsible for keeping the Tesla superchargers working and online in my region. I met him at a Starbucks, and we actually met because he asked me about my Ioniq 5. And then when I started talking about how, yeah, I love this car, but I wish I had the supercharger network. And we agreed to talk about it on the show and see what's in the future for the supercharger network. What would happen, in his opinion, if Tesla opened up the network to non Tesla EVs? What's the state of the situation now, and where are we headed? All of that and more today at 7 p.m. here on YAA Electric. And if
Awesome.
you're listening to this on the podcast, be sure to check that out. It's going to be an amazing conversation. Well, thank you so much,
Awesome.
Mario. Any parting words for the viewers?
Um, I'm just on the topic of buying. How important it is to find the right dealer and leverage the information that's on the community and available like on our blog listings and stuff. Just because I 9 out of 10 times just doing that part well, it's gonna land you a good deal. It's not so much about going with the first one that you
Yes.
gotta source a good dealer. It's just a lot of work, but it's doable in every state that I can see.
Yeah, now we didn't have time to run over to YAA car dealer reviews, but if you're in the market for an EV, you're not shopping for Tesla, you're not shopping for Rivian, Lucid, Polestar, you're going to go with an EV made by, someone who does not sell direct to consumer. You should check out YAA car dealer reviews, because we've got thousands, literally thousands of reviews submitted by the crowd. We've
Mhm.
crowdsourced thousands of dealer reviews where we've got, I don't know, I've seen maybe a few dozen Ioniq 5 purchases on there, EV6 purchases, ID4s. EV buyers are leaving their reviews and telling the world what kind of markup the specific dealership was requiring, what kinds of forced dealer add-ons. I hate when they do that. What kinds of add-ons were tacked on, or at least attempted to tack on to the final bill of sale. All of that information and more is available at YAA Car Dealer Reviews. So check that out at joinyaa.com. And of course, we've got Car Search, where you can find your next deal. We have the out the door pricing, which is not it's not brought up often enough when thinking about buying a car. If you're going to purchase a car, how much is it going to actually cost once you include the fees, taxes, and whatnot? Check out YAA Car Search, where you can learn all about the out the door price and get a better idea of how much you'll actually be spending. Sound about right, Mario? Did I do a good job of summarizing what we do there at Car Search?
Exactly. Yeah, very well.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I'll see you all at 7 p.m. Eastern, so 6 p.m. Central. And what time is that in your time zone? 4 p.m.?
Yeah, 3 hours.
Yeah. All right. Well, 4 p.m. Pacific. Hopefully someone's able to show up from the West Coast. All right, everyone. I'll see you in just a few hours and in 10 minutes. Check us out at the Ray and Zach channel. We've got more convos going on there. See you soon. Thank you so much, Mario.
No, thank you for having me. Bye.